Let's turn to Genesis 34 this morning as we look through the scriptures and see what God has to communicate with us through the Bible this morning. Genesis 34, the scriptures are printed there for you in the bulletin. The main idea here this morning is simply this. You cannot use unholiness to accomplish holiness. You cannot use to do something holy, in fact. Unholiness could never bring something holy. In the face of evil and unjust scenarios that we might face in life also, the question is, what should our response be to these things? Not as a government, not as God, but as an individual. These are some of the questions that we're going to explore this morning together from Genesis 34. First, desire to not accomplish something holy for you. Let's read verses 1 through 11 of 34. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his sons were with the lion of his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry, because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give." The first offense that occurs here, of course, is Jacob or Israel is his sons and all of his caravan, you could say. They come to a certain place, and Dinah goes out to see some of the women of the land, and she's raped by this man, Shechem. It first starts the feud, so to speak. And then he, it says, is drawn to her with a tender love, and he wants to marry her after he's already made this decision to first be violent with her. He has a desire upon something which was unblessed by God. Of course, his violence and his lust to begin with. And this will never work. Shechem's resulting attempt at love and marriage could not justify his first act of rape. His desire by justice or by grace, and his sin could not be transformed into something redeeming. Often we even ourselves would attempt to baptize our lusts or our desires. We would justify ourselves. But just because the world says that something is okay, or we can think of a reason to justify it, this does not make it holy. This does not make it holy. Toronto Mayor Rob Ford gave this quote after a video surfaced of him smoking a crack pipe at a party. This is what he said. You ready? He said, "I'm saving time. You know what? I made mistakes. I drank too much. I smoked some crack sometime. What can I say? I made a mistake. I'm a human." Justification comes frequently. And here's the funny thing, right? Is that justification really easily, right? When he says something like that. But to spot our own justifications, our own attempts to justify something unholy in our lives. We all things. It is amazing the way in which people attempt to justify their sins. Thieves who say the victims didn't need the money anymore. Illicit sex that was done because it felt so right. Violence because they had it coming. Jesus came and died for you to justify you from your sins so that you would not even attempt to justify yourself. Don't even try. Confess are what brings God's forgiveness, not self-justification. Are there any sins in your life, perhaps, that you're attempting to justify at this particular moment? Are you committing the first offense in some scenario like Shechem here that's going to invite disastrous consequences in the end? These are things that you should think very seriously about. Number 2, anger that results in deceitful violence accomplish something for you. So the first turn is by Dinah, but now there's a second turn that's going to come back from the sons of Jacob, which is also unholy. Let's read 12 through 31. He finishes by saying, "Ask for me as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I'll give you whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife." The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition we will agree with you, that you will become as we are by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone." Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem, and the young man did not delay to do the thing because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city, and spoke to the men of their city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Let them dwell on the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us, to become one people, when every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us." And all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. On the third day, when they were sore, 2 of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, died and came against the city while it felt secure, and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all the little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses, they captured and plundered. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" Simeon and Levi, in particular, deceived the Canaanites here in order to exact violent revenge. The deception that they give to them is rooted in their sense of vigilante justice, which is personal and immoral in this case. It's not governmental justice, and it's not by divine command. There's a difference. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. I'm sure they thought they were doing the right thing in their own minds here, right? And they were rather proud of this plan that they had come up with. But it could not be justified. It was immoral. It was vigilante justice. They decided to kill all these people as a wrong response to the first wrong that had been committed. Two wrongs cannot make a right. I think that's very clear from the Bible. You know, when you're trying to use the enemy's tactics to defeat your enemy, it will not work in the long run. You cannot fight fire with fire, ultimately. There was an interview that happened with a former DEA agent, Paul D'Arienzo, and he said in an interview concerning the quote-unquote war on drugs in the United States. This was his quote. He said, "I was from the street was in me. There was a thin line between me and the guys I was working on as an agent. That line was so thin that drug dealers couldn't see it. The line that separated me from being suspect as an agent was so thin that drug dealers could never believe I was an agent." And of course, as a DEA agent, he would regularly deal drugs. It's kind of just the tactics that they use. But you can never use the enemy's tactics to accomplish something good in the end. There's been a lot of negative things, I think, that came out of a lot of that DEA, whatnot in America. But you can never use the enemy's tactics to destroy something evil, ultimately. You may use them to restrain it for a time, or to seem like you're getting some results, to get your numbers up, so to speak. But in the end, you don't really actually deal with the problem. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:2, "But we have renounced disgraceful, underhanded ways. We refuse to practice cunning or to tamper with God's word. But by the open statement of the truth, we would commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God." Christians are to be just and open-handed in their approach to people. Jacob says later in Genesis 49 at the end of his relationship with these sons, "Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul not come into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel." You know, even Jesus, right? When evil men were coming to arrest him in the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter steps out, takes out his sword, and he cuts off the ear of one of the high priest's servants, right? What does Jesus do? He tells him, "Peter, put away your sword." And actually reaches out and he heals the ear of that servant that had been cut off. Jesus actually gave himself. He did not defend himself. He did not return an evil for evil. He did not return violence for violence. He didn't even defend himself when he was being slandered in that situation. And then as he was dying on the cross, he actually cries out, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It was not something wrong. It was not even justice, actually, that brought about the redemption of mankind, which is the only ultimate hope that can reconcile people to each other and people to God. It was an act of sacrifice which brought reconciliation. Only through Christ's sacrifice and his resulting resurrection can people find reconciliation with each other and with God. You can never give sacrificial, unconditional love until you have first received sacrificial and unconditional love from Jesus, ultimately. That's the answer. What they gave back to the Canaanites was not the answer. What Jesus came and did for us, that was the answer. So here's some questions as you would try to apply this message to your own life. Number one, are you using unholiness to try to accomplish holiness? Are you using unholiness to try to accomplish holiness? Number 2, are you justifying some sin because you say it will lead to something good in the end? Are you justifying some sin because you say it will lead to something good in the end? Number 3, can you win the hearts of people, for example, of another religion, primarily by tearing down their prophets or by lifting up Jesus? Can you win the hearts of people of another religion, primarily by tearing down their prophets or by lifting up Jesus? I think you know the answer to that question. Number 4, do you tear down people you disagree with, or do you love and serve them? Do you tear down people you disagree with, or do you love and serve them? Number 5, are you letting Jesus show you the way to the fact that holiness can only be accomplished through a heart renewed by the gospel? Have you let Christ show you the way to the fact that only through the gospel can you accomplish something holy? You know, how would you react if someone had did that to your daughter or your sister? Like they came and they raped them. How would you respond to that? I mean, I know what I would want to do. Just what Simeon and Levi did. But how can transformation come? Only through the gospel. Only through sacrifice, which Christ first did for us, and then can do through us as we interact with others. And what is the gospel way when trying to accomplish some holy command in the midst of an unholy world all around us? If Jesus said love, then you have to love enemies. Those guys come into your camp and they do that to one of yours, and then the command is before you, love your enemies. Doesn't mean they won't come to justice. They should, from the government, and then one day on the day of judgment from God. So there's going to be justice given. But for you personally to give the response, love your enemies, how are you ever going to do that? Only through the gospel way. Here's the gospel way. Are you ready? 5 points of the gospel way. Number 1, you must. You have the command. Enemies, it's a holy command from Christ. But number 2, you can't. Because you're sinful. Because you're fallen. Because you're weak. Because you're broken. You cannot, of your own strength, do that. Number 1, you must. Number 2, you can't. Number 3, you desire because of a spiritually renewed heart. Because the Holy Spirit's at work and He begins to desire to do what Christ has told you to do. Number 3, you desire. And number 4, then you cast yourself upon the mercy and grace of God. You cast yourself upon the grace of God. And then, what happens? Number 5, you shine. He shows up. He changes your heart. He begins to work and do miracles. And number 5, you shine, doing what God has asked you to do in a way that is pleasing through Him. I hope that this situation, for example, would show you, right, if this happened to you or to yours, it would show you that you could never be holy. You could never respond in the right way if it were not for God changing your heart through the Holy Spirit, through the gospel. That Christ, when He was reviled, did not revile in return. When He was murdered, He was not violent back. When He was beaten, when He was accused, He did not even open His mouth. But actually, through that sacrifice, He overcame everything. Death, evil, Satan, sin, He overcame everything. because of what Christ has done when he came to this earth, and because of what he's doing in your life today, you also can be transformed to have the proper response when something evil comes your way. Two wrongs don't make a right. You can't fight fire with fire. You must fight evil. What? With evil, you're going to crush evil? Ultimately, that will not accomplish it. That'll just make the evil ones even more mad. No, it's through love, through sacrifice.